Continuing with John 5. If I testify about myself, my witness is not valid. It is another who testifies about me. I know that the testimony which he testifies about me is true. And so Jesus is actually drawing on this idea from Deuteronomy 17 that at the mouth of two witnesses or three witnesses, he who is to die shall be put to death. At the mouth of one witness, he shall not be put to death. And so conceptually, the idea is that you need to have not just one person telling you things for something to be true. And that is something that holds true for, kind of the general thing, not just for capital cases. Okay. And so in this case, Jesus is like, hey, look, if it was just me talking about this, yeah, you wouldn't take it. He's like, but I've got other testimony. All right. I've got other testimony that goes with this. He says, and I can testify that that testimony is true. Okay, which I think is right, right? Okay, but you have sent to John, and he has testified to the truth. But the testimony which I receive is not from man. However, I say these things that you might be saved. He was the burning and shining lamp, and you were willing to rejoice for a while in his light. But the testimony which I have is greater than that of John. Okay. And so he says, okay, not only do I have another testimony, which I'm going to tell you about in a minute, but like John himself testified about who I was. You guys went to him. And we already have this earlier in John, right? Where you guys go to John the Baptist and he's like, I'm not the Messiah, but I'm preparing you for the one who is the Messiah. And then he actually testifies about who Jesus is, right? And so Jesus is like, look, I don't need people to testify about me, but like, John's there for you. Like if you need proof of who I am, there it is. There's John. Okay. But he's like, I've got somebody better than John though. Okay. He says, for the works which the Father gave me to accomplish, the very works that I do, testify about me that the Father has sent me. Okay, and what are these very works? Well, the fact that he just healed a lame man is one of those works, and that's the work that he's defending right now because he had told the guy to pick up his mat and walk, which of course gets the religious leader's attention. So Jesus is like, "Yep, I did that, and that should show you who I really am. You should know that's a testimony about who I am. That's one, okay? In addition to John, which you don't need to count, okay, or me, which you don't need to count, okay. All right. The Father himself who sent me has testified about me. You have neither heard his voice at any time, nor have you seen his form. You don't have his word living in you because you don't believe him whom he sent. Okay, and this is actually interesting, right? Because, he's like, you guys don't know who God is. You guys don't get it, okay? So we have this passage way back in Exodus 24. Then Moses, Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel went up, and they saw the God of Israel. Under his feet was like a paved work of sapphire stone, like the skies for clearness. He didn't lay his hand on the nobles of the children of Israel. They saw God and ate and drank. And there's some interesting stuff because we actually have this like peace meal that's going on right now where they're actually sharing a meal that shows that there's connection. Like there's some really cool historical ideas that are baked into this, but also it's like, hey, these people went up and saw God. But you guys didn't, because this is that whole story where Israel's there at the bottom of the mountain, and then it looks like there's like fire that's like destroying everything, and they're like, we don't want to go up there. We're okay staying away from God. Okay, like we don't want that. You can go up there and talk to him. And so this group does. But Jesus is saying, you guys weren't part of that group, right? And not only that, even if you were, you should be listening. Okay? You should be listening to me because that's whom God said. Okay? God sent me. Right. You search the scriptures because you think that in them you have eternal life. And these are they which testify about me. Yet you will not come to me that you may have life. I don't receive glory from men, but I know you, that you don't have God's love in yourselves. I have come in my Father's name, and you don't receive me. If another comes in his own name, you will receive him. How can you believe who receive glory from one another, and you don't seek the glory that comes from the only God? Just like, look, I'm coming to you on God's behalf. I'm coming because he sent me. But when like you just have somebody that you think is cool, you go after that person, but you don't follow me. Like you guys clearly are not following God. You guys clearly are missing it. Okay? Don't think that I will accuse you to the Father. There is one who accuses you, even Moses, on whom you have set your hope. For if you believed Moses, you would have believed me, for he wrote about me. But if you don't believe his writings, how will you believe my words?" Okay. And there's some crazy stuff going on. Okay, so this is Exodus 32. On the next day, Moses said to the people, "You have sinned a great sin. Now I will go up to Yahweh. Perhaps I shall make atonement for your sin." Moses returned to Yahweh and said, "Oh, this people have sinned a great sin and have made themselves gods of gold." Okay, so this is after Israel has made the golden calf and worshiped that and said, "This is the God who brought you up out of Egypt." Okay, so this is idolatry. Okay, this is all that stuff. And yeah, it's bad. And yet now, if you will, forgive their sin. And if not, please blot me out of the book which you have written. Okay. And Yahweh says, okay, yeah, whoever sin will do all that. Okay. But the point is that even with blatant, clear idolatry, Moses goes and intercedes for the people. He says, please forgive them. And here Jesus says, look, you're looking to Moses. He's gonna come against you. Okay, he asked for forgiveness for the people when they built a golden calf, but he's going to accuse you now because you are not following me. And he wrote about me. He told you that I was coming. Okay, and how did he tell him what passages? Right. Okay, well, we've already covered this, but in Deuteronomy 18, Yahweh your God will raise up to you a prophet from among you of your brothers like me. You shall listen to him. This is the prophet. Okay, and we've talked about this before. We've already done this, but Jesus is like, look, Moses told you I was coming. And so if you don't want to listen to what he wrote, if like the writings, the thing that's like super important to you, how are you going to listen to me? Okay, like what are you going to do? Okay. After these things, Jesus went away to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, which is also called the Sea of Tiberias. A great multitude followed him because they saw his signs, which he did on those who were sick. Jesus went up into the mountain and sat there with his disciples. Now, the Passover, the feast of the Jews, was at hand. So there's some okay, so Jesus crosses over the lake. You've got kind of the Sea of Galilee, right? And it's kind of like this, and it's about 7 miles this way and about like five-ish this way at the widest. Okay, and it's kind of there, and he kind of goes which direction are we going? He kind of goes around, okay, the lake, and then people follow him. And then we have this weird note from John that says, "Now the Passover, the feast of the Jews, was at hand." Why? Why are we talking about Passover all of a sudden? Well, we are connecting it back to Moses, which we just talked about. And then there's going to be more connections going forward. So just keep Passover in your mind as we continue forward, because John wants you to do so. Okay. So he's gone up, and now there's all these people. Jesus, therefore, lifted up his eyes, and seeing the great multitude was coming to him, said to Philip, okay, he's like, hey, look at all these people. Where are we to buy bread that these may eat? He said this to test him, for he himself knew what he would do. Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may receive even a little. Okay, so he's like, more than half a year. We could work for, like, what do you mean, Jesus? Where are we gonna buy all this bread? What are you talking about? So you're just like, how are we gonna feed them? And Philip's like, that doesn't make sense. One of the disciples, Andrew, Simon's brother, said to him, there is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are these among so many? Okay, so he's like, hey, here's some barley. I don't know. Like, John wants us to think about a particular passage in the Old Testament. Okay. We're about to see a miracle, but we've seen this before. Okay. So if we go back to 2 Kings 4, all right, it says, a man from Shalishma, Shalishma, whatever, okay, came and brought the man of God some bread from the first fruits, 20 loaves of barley and fresh ears of grain in his sack. He said, give to the people that they may eat. His servant said, what? Should I set this before 100 men? But he said, give the people that they may eat. For Yahweh says, they will eat and will have some left over. So he said before them, and that came up, and they ate, and they had some left over, according to Yahweh's word. So what we have is barley. All right, we have this barley, and we have not nearly enough food. Only in this case, we've got like one kid's lunch, five little loaves, 2 little fish. Okay, and how is this going to feed all these people, okay, this giant crowd. Where here in Second Kings, it was 20 loaves, and that wasn't enough to feed 100 people. Okay. Now, another thing that's interesting is that this idea here, where he's like, well, we've got this boy, right? We've got this boy, right? This boy here, right? And that word is actually the same word in the Septuagint as is used up here for servant. It's the lad, it's the boy. Okay, so like there are multiple connections back to this passage with Elisha here. Okay, so like John is setting us up if we know our Old Testament for what's about to happen. Okay, Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." Now there was much grass in that place, so the men sat down in number about 5,000. We only counted men at this point in time in history, so that means that there are women and children too. So this could be like 15, 20,000 people. Like this is a crazy number of people, and we've got remember what one lunch with five little loaves of bread and a little bit of fish. Okay. Jesus took the loaves, and having given thanks, he distributed to the disciples, and the disciples to those who were sitting down, likewise also the fish, as much as they desired. Okay, and notice that like the fish is kind of like an afterthought, and it'll be an afterthought again later, because John is trying to bring us back to Elisha with this. Okay, so the barley loaves is the focus piece. Okay. When they were filled, he said to his disciples, gather up the broken pieces which are left over, that nothing be lost. So they gathered them up and filled 12 baskets with broken pieces from the 5 barley loaves which were left over by those who had eaten. Okay? 12, of course, going back to the 12 tribes of Israel. If you go to the Matthew series, this is spelled out a whole lot more, but basically, yeah, we've got enough for everybody with this. Okay? And when therefore the people saw the sign which Jesus did, they said, this is truly the prophet who comes into the world. Okay, remember Deuteronomy 18? All right. Jesus, therefore, perceiving that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, withdrew again to the mountain by himself. Jesus is like, yeah, I know where you guys are going with this. Nope, I'm out of here. Okay, so he kind of like leaves, right? Which is pretty great. Okay, and now, when evening came, his disciples went down to the sea. Okay, Jesus has been gone. Jesus just left because he didn't want to be made king. And now the disciples are like, well, it's nighttime. Like, I guess we'll go home. Okay. They entered into the boat and were going over the sea to Capernaum. Okay, so they're going back. Okay, they're going back across the little sea there. Okay. It was now dark, and Jesus had not come to them. This is John again, this darkness theme of like, now they're totally alone out on the water, not a good place for them to be. The sea was tossed by a great wind blowing. When therefore they had rowed about 25 or 30 stadia, so now they've gone several miles, okay? So now they're close to the other side. They saw Jesus walking on the sea and drawing near the boat, and they were afraid. Okay, and this has a note about Job 9:8, and you can go look that up if you want. Okay, but he said to them, "It is I." Okay, or I am. Okay, it's me. All right, don't be afraid. Which is again this connection back to a God claim, right? Using his name. They were willing therefore to receive him into the boat. Immediately the boat was at the land where they were going. Now, this is different from Matthew's account. If you go back and listen to that, this is slightly different. The storm calming doesn't happen here. That's not the important part of this whole miracle. It's that he's walking on the water. You can go to see that. It's that, and then they instantly arrive where they're supposed to go, and that's kind of weird, right? Like what's going on with that? And a commentary that I was reading pointed out that in Psalm 107 it says, he makes the storm a calm, so that its waves are still. They are glad because it is calm. So he brings them to their desired haven. And so this commentary said, wow, this idea of like instantly getting there seems to connect with that idea of like God bringing them or Jesus bringing them where they needed to be, right? Okay, so I think that's just interesting. But there's some weird stuff with that, right? Like that's a little bit different. But the point is that walking on the water is even bigger than like, calming it and all that for John. On the next day, the multitude that stood on the other side of the sea saw that there was no other boat there except the one in which his disciples had embarked, and that Jesus hadn't entered with his disciples into the boat, but his disciples had gone away alone. However, boats from Tiberias came near to the place where they ate the bread after the Lord had given thanks. When the multitude therefore saw that Jesus wasn't there, nor his disciples, they themselves got into their boats and came to Capernaum seeking Jesus. When they found him on the other side of the sea, they asked him, Rabbi, when did you come here? So everybody gets up the next morning and they're like, well, Jesus didn't leave, but he's not around here. So where's Jesus? Okay, because we didn't see him go with his disciples. We saw his disciples leave, but like, where's Jesus? And then other people come back and they're like, yeah, Jesus. I thought, and they're like, what? Okay, and so then they go back across and then they're like, hey, how'd you get here, man? Like, what? We don't understand. Like, what's going on here? Okay, so there's some confusion about how Jesus got across the lake or got over there or when he left. Like, what's going on, Jesus? Okay, Jesus answered them. Most certainly I tell you, you seek me, not because you saw signs, but because you ate the loaves and were filled. Don't work for food which perishes, but for the food which remains to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. For God the Father has sealed him. All right, so we have this interesting thing here. Oh man, and now I need to find that passage. So we have over here in Isaiah 55. Hey, come everyone who thirsts to the waters. Come, he who has no money, buy and eat. Yes, come, buy wine and milk without money and without price. Why do you spend money for that which is not bread, and your labor for that which doesn't satisfy? Listen diligently to me, and eat that which is good, and let your soul delight in its richness. Turn your ear and come to me. Hear, and your soul will live. I will make an everlasting covenant with you, even the sure mercies of David. Okay, and so Jesus is saying again, like, hey, look, I know you guys like getting free food. Like, who doesn't like a free lunch, right? Like, you should be going for something more than that. And I have that to offer. Okay. So this whole claim of like this new kingdom, this new life thing, this eternal life. Jesus is like, I've got that for you. Do you want it? They said therefore to him, what must we do that we may work the works of God? So people are like, okay, well, what do you want us to do exactly? Jesus answered them, this is the work of God, that you believe in him whom he has sent. So what do you have to do? You have to believe. What's the big religious act that you need to believe? You need to believe in Jesus. And Jesus brings this up again and again. John brings this up again and again. And Jesus has been saying this throughout this with some pretty harsh words. Okay? What's the whole point? What do you need to do? What's that super spiritual thing? Believe in Jesus. That's it. It's that simple. Okay, and we've been talking about this idea of Passover and Moses and all that. And as we get into this, next time we study this, it's going to be a lot more of that. So just keep that in mind, this bread thing and the thing and all that. We're going to be getting into Exodus 16. Probably could have done that this time, but we'll save that for next time. Okay, so there you go. And we'll see you when we continue next time.